So, if y'all didn't know, the New Day has mutually parted ways with the WWE after recent financial disputes because of a 50% pay cut. Some of TKO is trying to sustain, I guess, a financial quota. And this is already with them trying to keep it a bit younger in the rotation. But the hierarchy is still around older. So, Kairi Sane, that's like 37-year-old woman, for pushing 40, 39-year-old AJ Lee that has barely got a collection of matches other than some PLE appearances. And this is also with the confusion of how the Wyatt Six, all 5 of these assholes were DLC, by the way, just to become irrelevant, overbooked secondary appearances just to fill over screen time over in the weekly televised product that wasn't even getting as much viewership as Netflix Monday Night Raw, apparently. And then they want to push over the comparison that they have a difficulty trying to even book dark storylines, and yet they still keep the Judgment Day because it hasn't been dark since Edge was the leading holder of the faction. And yet they still try to sign Evil, that I swear he should be pushing in his mid-40s at this point. The ex-husband of Kairi Sane that has like an occult style gimmick that literally was leading a faction that was incredibly based on the occult. And it sucks too, because how can you even tell after a 7-figure rise for your established faces of the company for over a decade and a half? Xavier Woods, Kofi Kingston, we know the health constraints for why Biggie Langston isn't a regular piece of the main roster anymore. Even though he was heavily booked to even push over for the New Day's heel turn that only got one world tag title run. No individual bookings for either Kofi or Xavier Woods, and instinctively has cut them off of the weekly televised roster except for some segments. So that just means one thing. TKO's cost cutting is predominantly lessening their product. So even if you buy WWE 2K26, some of the guys that you watch over on weekly television, they won't even be there. Alba Fire, part of the Chelsea Green faction, is gone. Santos Escobar is gone. When that guy's coming back from injury, even though I know he wasn't doing much. And yet, some of these guys possibly might come back into more constrained deals. And you know what this tells me? WWE sucks at negotiating. Because we did the same thing when we had the R-Truth incident happen. And then they tried to constrain them over a new, lesser deal for tenured guys that are not going to take that. Because most of the time they are on the road. They are heavily reliant on weekly television. Not getting their spots taken, getting over with the boys and over for the fans for a majority of the part. So why try to cut over their contracts? And you know what Xavier would do? I know he has a connection with Kenny Omega. Knowing they're nerds. Also well known around the indies. And they have a video game history against one another. I won't blame them if they go to AEW. It's even weirder if you're a Kofi Kingston fan. Knowing Kofi Kingston's coming all the way from FCW, debuting on ECW, winning a plethora of championships, even a world title win against Daniel Bryan back at 35 of WrestleMania. Most of the audience members from WWE from at least the previous generation or mine have seen Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston for an extensive part around their childhood. And you're trying to cut off that familiarity with the audience, where it's already hard enough to get some of the new guys over. Like Ricky Saints, on his debut on SmackDown, barely got an extensive pop for a guy that only spent like a a cup of coffee on NXT, one NXT title run, and this guy's in his mid-30s trying to push over a new face over on the roster. That wasn't even initially over, like a la LA Knight that already can get the crown over the palm of his hands, but just wasn't familiar for WWE audience. And you know how over he is now. But Ricky Saints already didn't get barely any pop over on Dynamite. He barely got any pop over on NXT. And now he's barely getting any pop over on SmackDown. That's already in a plethora of talent pulling the wild card rule method. When as soon as Gunter comes out of a storyline where he just was rushed over to a Rollins match, and don't get me wrong, their wrestling match is irrelevant even though how good it is. It shows how much WWE is inept at even trying to keep any type of, cohesion or continuity with trying to get a Legend Killer 2.0 gimmick, or at least a retiree gimmick, or Gunter not even trying to keep guys off TV for an extensive amount of months. No, you can't even book guys that can cripple people anymore. And now you're trying to, and now you're just making TKO is just letting WWE loyalist guys that's been there over in the business, that have built their own established brands and has deep connections with the locker room, out. That's even drawing a straw with me. And even though I didn't like the New Day over as a gimmick, I wasn't a fan of when they pushed the title on Kofi Kingston. I felt Big E deserved it over Kofi first. All due respect to Kofi Kingston. It's just crazy to me knowing what TKO affiliates their standards with. We're trying to make a professional wrestling business feel like a sports franchise and try to initiate over a salary cap for guys that are going to be killing them, practically shortening their nervous system for the sake of getting themselves and the company over. That's crazy to me. TKO is really pushing a thin line over the quarterly releases that possibly might even bump over to 30 because of the plethora of talent surplus that comes over from developmental. So they're hoping around the tenured veterans get heat over with TKO and try to push over for extensive contracts just so they can fire them later. Just to pull over a more surplus NXT talent. And they're going to struggle to get over because you already lose the main faces of the previous generations that were over. I'm sorry. That just messed me up the wrong way. I can understand that Kairi Sane was feeling a bit homesick. I've been hearing that it must have been a drama coordinated thing involving her ex-husband that is a Japanese wrestler named Evil over on NXT that got signed. Or possibly homesickness that she really wanted to be back over in Japan. And for that, I get it. If that was more of her personal ambition, I understand. The New Day, over a mutual dispute, whenever I hear mutual dispute, mutually decided to depart from the WWE, that means you got them all the way fucked up. Xavier was really displayed over, I think, on a post, you shouldn't go below your worth. And I respect that. And that thing you did with Paige over in that video, but that's besides the point. Tell me how you guys feel down below. You feel like this is not even going to be the beginning? I'm shocked certain WWE superstars, and no offense to them, I felt like more of them were going to leave. Fraxium was going to leave. Otis and Tozawa has been there for a minute. I already saw Apollo Crews left, and he was main event for the last 4 years after his Nigerian gimmick kind of fell over the wayside because it got heat with white people. And of course, Vicky Starks, that's literally coming back from that injury that she had after a botched kick from the top rope. And of course, Aleister Black that got hoed after trying to be teased over the replacement Karrion Kross spot to be in a major angle with Randy Orton just to cut that off, even though you had this guy on weekly television feuding with B-plus players like Damian Priest for the past 6 months, just to exit him out of the company and home over an angle that would have defined his career. just for fat chuds like Mason Rook to probably come over to the main roster and F up any type of legitimacy of main event stardom WWE can actually develop. It's that bad out there. They probably took the entertainment out of WWE. They probably released that as well into part of that over a mutual decision. That's it for me over in the DSC show. Like, comment, subscribe for more. I'm going to take my Tylenol. You guys have a great rest of the week.